Hey guys, Daniel here, and today there's gonna be another live stream of the What channel. So here we go. I'm muting this because it's on commercial breaking. I don't want to share. I don't wanna. Alright.
Central, you are watching the Weather Channel. I'm meteorologist Chris Warren in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It's 42 degrees right now. Winds have been gusting still into the mid-30s, making it feel like it is freezing. The wind has been persistent, but with the high tide, there has been inundation of water, including across the bay here in Duxbury, Massachusetts, which is to the north. And there was a lot of high water there, with 97% of the community of Duxbury still without power at this hour. Wind does remain a concern because it can bring down trees and branches, and it can push more water on shore. That's what's going on here in Massachusetts. People are dealing with power outages. In fact, not just in New England, but all the way down into parts of the southeast as well. 16 states with at least some people along the East Coast with power outages. More than 1.6 million customers without power across the eastern seaboard. This was a monster of a nor'easter, and there's another storm on the west coast right now, which is eventually going to work across the country, potentially ending up into this general area. But before that, we are seeing the impacts of that storm. Winter Storm Quinn is dumping a ton of snow in the mountains, and when you get too much snow, when you get feet of snow in just a couple or a few days, the avalanche danger goes way up. That's what we saw today and yesterday. Squaw Valley in Tahoe, an avalanche taking out skiers and snowboarders. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured or killed in that avalanche from yesterday. But what we understand is that the resort does remain closed because of the avalanche. So we're looking at extreme snowfall amounts on one coast, high winds on the other, extremely high winds on the other. That's this coast, so on the East Coast. Let's go back to the southeast, to the Atlanta headquarters. That's where we find our winter weather expert, Tom Nizzo, who is tag teaming with our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knapp. And Tom, as we're looking at this storm that's winding up, and we're seeing what it's doing, and we're seeing how it's slamming much of the west coast there with the snow, it's hard to imagine the same one could be affecting areas here.
Yeah, this is Winter Storm Quinn. It could eventually get all the way over to the East Coast. We'll be talking about that in a minute. But unfortunately, with 5 feet of snow down onto those mountains like in the Sierra, on top of old snowpack, it raises the risk of slab avalanches. That's what they've been dealing with. Some of the slopes have been closed because of the heavy snowfall. Let's take a look at Quinn. Winter Storm Quinn coming out of the west now. It's going to go in this direction to begin with. As it comes across the Rocky Mountains, it's going to produce snowfall all the way up through the Midwest in phase 1 of the storm. Again, take a look at these totals. Over 5 feet of snow in these areas across the Sierra. This is just amazing snowfall. They haven't had much this winter. This is great for them because that's water in the bank for their snowpack. Huge area of winter storm warnings out, including Salt Lake City right now. This system is going to move onto the west coast, and then it's going to jump across the Rockies, redevelop in Colorado, and move northeastward up toward the upper Midwest. At this point, there will be some pretty strong winds to the north and west of that system over the Dakotas. It's going to be a combination of snow and wind for this area, and naturally the system is going to begin to move eastward. This is the snowfall forecast. Up across North Dakota and South Dakota, you see double-digit snowfalls. What I don't like about this is there's going to be some strong winds as well, and this is an area that we refer to as Blizzard Alley. We could see a combination of wind and snow in these areas in this phase of Quinn to produce blizzard conditions. So stay tuned. We're going to keep you updated on Quinn. We're going to talk about its potential impacts into the East Coast later this week.
So guys, but they were talking about that Quinn's supposed to go into the Midwest, they're supposed to there's a potential they could rephase and go into the Northeast, creating maybe another nor'easter. But both of the models have been agreeing on this, the GFS and the Euro. Now these models haven't been that accurate this year, especially the GFS. But it still could happen because even a lot of models are agreeing with this, not just the GFS and Euro, a lot of them. So this still is a threat to the East Coast. So it's something that we gotta watch out for. I'm gonna give you an update of what the storm's saying. I will return back to the stream in about 5 minutes. But what this storm's saying is that is that it's gonna she's gonna go over or it's gonna go into the upper Midwest. It's gonna get a spin. It's gonna give a spin. It's gonna go across Iowa. Then it's just gonna surf down. It is gonna weaken, as you can see. It weakens, but then look, when it gets in the water, it re-intensifies and it streams up the East Coast. And moderate to heavy snow, if this scenario happens, is likely. Look at these deeper blue colors from New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania. That is heavy snowfall. Now, the total snowfall the storm's saying for the GFS model is saying a widespread 6 to 8 to 12 inches. So for major cities like Philly, New York, not really Boston, but Boston could get at least a good 4 inches. But for Philly and New York, they could get like anywhere from 6 to 8, which is this model saying 6 to 8 inches, and even higher into Connecticut, maybe possibly over a foot in New Jersey, in northwest New Jersey, getting hammered with more snow, like it's been getting all this season. And the icon is less confident now. It hasn't been saying that much. The CMC is still saying more interior. Still more interior. But the CMC is saying. And you can't rule it out right now. Now the short range, I don't think the short range now what I see is that the short range isn't that confident. Well, hold on, let me pull up this. Actually, I think the short range say it's gonna develop later. Maybe that's why it's not showing the snow. Hold on. Yep, that's what it's saying. So right now, well, it's having it coming off the North Carolina coast, but all of the models are taking it from all the way to the Midwest, going straight, making a dip down south, then going through Ohio, through West Virginia, into the ocean, and moving up. The short range thing just gonna go from the Rockies and go straight ahead towards North Carolina. I don't know, and it still could be a nor'easter if it moves up. If it goes straight out, then no. So that's why I'm uncertain right now, because the storm has, because the models have been accurate, but it still definitely could happen. I'm not taking it off the books. I really think it could really happen. It would surprise me if the short range might agree. So I gotta see what that says later tonight into tomorrow. Alright, it's 6:30 now. I'm gonna go back into the stream.
In the 30 to 40 mile per hour range. Behind me is Ross Elementary School. There's a flag that we can see that's been whipping around in the wind, but amazing to see this. Yesterday, we had wind gusts in this area and in the greater Boston area of 60, 70 miles per hour, and those winds have actually torn the roof off of this elementary school. Yesterday, the road next to me here, a very busy roadway, was closed because of this debris. Folks were saying that some of that debris looked like parts of the building were actually coming off. So incredible images here. The impacts are far-reaching from Winter Storm Riley, and we're about 5-6 miles away from the coast. Out on the coast, the impacts were absolutely tremendous. We've got some video here showing some of the waves that were coming in from some of those big swells right off the coast. 20 to 30-foot waves at time with the very strong and persistent onshore flow. A lot of those waves were crashing over 3- and 4-story homes, which is just unfathomable to think about how big those impacts truly were. Now here in Braintree tonight, the winds are going to be the main issue. We're still expecting to see those strong gusts, but Dr. Nab, out on the coast, we're still anticipating at least 2 more high tides, which could cause some flooding. Dr. Nab.
Yes, I know folks are tired of this. You know, they wish that the coastal flooding issue would just end, and we have this intermittent aspect of it because of the astronomical tides, 2 of them per day, and we get them around midday, we get them around midnight, and in between the coastal flooding issue gets lessened, but then it comes back again. We got another high tide coming tonight, and high tides are a little higher than average. That's been the unfortunate timing of this relative to Winter Storm Riley, and Riley just isn't going very far very quickly, and it remains extraordinarily large, and the northern side of it is still pushing the Atlantic Ocean into the coastal areas of eastern Massachusetts. Now, the wind direction is a little bit more out of the north-northeast than it was. It was straight east when the event began, but that's preventing the water from draining during low tide, and then when we get to high tide, it pushes the water back onto the coastal roads. The orange areas here where we expect a moderate coastal flood impact tonight, those are the hot spots, and that includes down in Duxbury, in Plymouth, and Sandwich, and those areas, when we get around midnight tonight, the water could come back onto the roads, maybe not as much into the structures as before. Nantucket also will see some impacts with tonight's high tide. We also have some impacts down in the Jersey Shore, western Long Island, south-facing shores could get some moderate coastal flood impacts tonight. And I want to again explain why the tides are so important for when this all occurs. Tonight's high tide, even the one midday tomorrow, will be a little bit higher than average. The zero line here is the average highest tides of the day. So with the full moon having occurred, we've had these higher than average tides, and with Riley still present, we still have the storm surge component. Additional water rise of a couple feet. You put those together, and at Boston Harbor, for example, tonight we could have about 3 feet above normally dry ground, and then at Scituate, 2.8 to 3.4 feet above normally dry ground. A moderate coastal flood impact. Again, the water could come back onto the road. So again, so important, Dr. Navarro, that folks listen to local officials, and if they're told to stay away from the coastal areas, they got to do it. It's still potentially very, very dangerous.
Yeah, Dr. Nab, we really just can't stress that enough. Thank you so much. Great advice. Yes, now here in Braintree, Massachusetts, we're not so much as worried about the flooding issues because we're a little bit farther from the coast. But I actually want to send it out a little bit farther to my south, to Plymouth, Massachusetts, where our meteorologist Chris Warren is also standing by. And Chris, out there, we could be talking about some flooding issues again with that next high tide coming in tonight.
Exactly right, Dr. Navarro. And where I'm standing here, there's evidence of the high tides from last night and then yesterday afternoon. And across the bay, through the darkness, and we can see a few lights out there, but across the bay, that's where Duxbury is. And earlier we went and took a look over there, and people have a mess to deal with. There's water that got into homes, people having to clean up with that. Branches down, tree limbs down, roads flooded, and the cleanup, think about this, all the cleanup they have to do, it's cold, the wind is still blowing, temperatures are feeling like it is freezing, and they don't have power. Think about that. You have to do all that cleanup and no power.
We were sheltered for yesterday afternoon until the storm got further north. Then it started pushing the water down into the bay, and that's when Duxbury Bay floods. We have a barrier beach, which I don't know if the beach broke through. Sometimes that beach breaks through. So it'd be interesting to go out. But we were under state of emergency until a few hours ago. Police told us to stay off the roads. There's so many power lines down all over town. Pretty much almost no one has power unless they have a generator.
Yeah, here in Plymouth, I saw some power crews across the street. A pole, a transformer, caught on fire yesterday, and part of the pole, the wooden pole, snapped. And so they had a whole pole out there, and they were working on that. This side of where we are is dark. There's some light over here, and it's just some areas. That includes a big portion of Plymouth is still without power. So a lot of areas still no power for across 16 states. Remember that. It's not just here in Massachusetts, in New England, all the way down to the southeast have been impacted by this. And Dr. Nab, we're thinking about this storm, and it's still going to be strong winds and the flood threat. Then there's another one potentially for next week.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but come Wednesday and into Thursday, there could be another coastal storm. And Dr. Navarro's been talking about the impacts that they've received up near Boston. There could be even more impacts next week in terms of snow. I will talk with Tom Nizzle about that later in the hour. But we still have this event to get through tonight into tomorrow, and I'll show you in a moment how some places will be dealing with it for days to come. We still have the wind advisory for Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, where you could see winds gusting 40 to 50 miles per hour through this evening and into early tomorrow morning. Maybe the winds will gradually back off, but still could cause power outages if the power comes back. Some of these winds could send it back out again. And a tip of the cap to the folks who are out there trying to restore power, getting 30 feet up in the air in a truck, and the winds are blowing. They're trying to put the power lines back together. It's dangerous work, and so if you're frustrated by the power outages, understand that folks are doing their best with ongoing bad weather conditions. Also, the waves are continuing to be very large over a huge area, 30-foot plus waves offshore, getting close to the coast, and that's going to expand over the entire western Atlantic over the next couple of days. And I know the mid-Atlantic and Northeast are dealing with dangerous conditions, but so are our friends in Florida. If you don't listen to the lifeguards and you go into the ocean when you've got a high rip current risk, that could be life-threatening, so please be careful there. And down in Puerto Rico, we have a coastal flood watch and a high surf advisory. It's the swells that go out away from Riley that travel hundreds of miles and then crash onto the shores near the Caribbean. Amazing how far and wide these impacts are. We have Winter Storm Riley. We have Winter Storm Quin. We'll be talking about those. Stay with us here on the Weather Channel.
restored in Massachusetts. The damage is so extensive in the state, the governor has declared a state of emergency. At least one person is dead in Massachusetts after a tree fell on his vehicle. Jim Cantore got a chance to see how some of the damage is situated and spoke with one homeowner who is happy to be alive.
All right, Barry Finkel. Rough night last night.
Yeah, it was. The winds
Take me back here. Tell me what happened.
The winds picked up around 6 o'clock, and it was like a freight train. You could just hear it picking up, surging and surging, and then these trees came down at about 9 o'clock last night.
So you're inside with your family. I mean,
Yeah.
you're hearing the wind outside, but what happened? What was it like when the tree actually hit the house?
Well, the whole house shook, basically, and it sounded like there was an earthquake happening, and everybody was just freaking out, saying, "What happened? What happened?" My daughter was upstairs, and the tree basically came down like 3 feet to the left of where she was.
Are you serious?
Could have been much, much worse. Yeah, everybody's fine. Nobody got hurt. Just some damage to the house, but I'm telling you, it was pretty touch and go for a while.
We were talking about the age of this house earlier.
Yeah, it's in 1836, so
unbelievable.
it's an antique house and solid as a rock. You know, maybe a newer house wouldn't have withstood the damage or that type of an impact as well.
So you said that you actually had branches coming in the house.
Yeah, so
Chris, pan up there and show everybody, and then you can tell us about what happened.
there's a dormer up there coming out.
Yeah.
A tree basically a branch punctured through the ceiling there, right where my daughter was.
Gosh.
And water was coming in, so it was a rough night for sure. Everybody was a
What do
little
you?
freaked
I
out.
mean, obviously, you've got insurance. That's going to take care of that. But in the meantime, what do you guys do? It's pretty chilly. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
freezing cold, but it's chilly in there.
Yeah, it's chilly. It's about 50 degrees inside the house. They're saying we're not going to have power for like 3 to 5 days. So we've got places to go, relatives nearby in other towns that we can stay with, and the kids are okay. And we'll get through it one way or another. It's,
Still no fun, though. Right?
it's no fun, but we're New Englanders, and I can't say we're used to this kind of thing, but it's becoming more of a norm.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Barry. Good luck with everything, bro.
Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you talking to us. Again, dealing with the trees down, that's a big issue out and through here. That's why we have many, many areas without power. And, of course, we're hearing of, as you just heard Barry say, 3 to 5 days before some of this gets back on. The good news, it is March and not January. And the Arctic air mass coming in behind us.
Wow, what an amazing story. And once again, we're just scratching the surface of some of the damage that's coming in through New England. And now we're going to go to Little Rock, kind of switch gears a little bit. And some of the rainfall totals here have been well above average now, as the month is running well above average also. And I'm going to cover the wet side of Winter Storm Quinn because more rain is on the way. Take a look at some of these numbers now. Little Rock, you're 14.04 inches for the month of February, a record for the month. And you're 9.76 now above average for the year. And this is an area that actually had some drought reported earlier in the wintertime, and now we're making up for that in many rivers here. You can see the upside down triangles here, the red ones especially, at major flood stage and along the Mississippi. 220 gauges are actually in flood stage, so it's not over yet in terms of what we could see, though, in terms of precipitation, because more is on the way. We're now looking at the west side, the wet side of Winter Storm Quinn, and this is going to be a rainmaker once again in some of these same areas where we're going to see moisture coming up from the Gulf with the front heading on in, and this through Sunday and Monday will continue to bring more rain and thunderstorms through. Not a big severe weather threat, but that threat's not zero, so we're going to have a warm and fairly unstable air mass with showers and maybe some heavier rain with some of the thunderstorms as it rolls east. Places like Atlanta get wet again, Raleigh, Winston-Salem, all under the gun Monday, Tuesday to see some wet weather return. This is what it looks like in pictures as we go through tomorrow, watching the showers, thunderstorms as we go through the day tomorrow into Monday, start getting back into Little Rock, back towards Shreveport and Jackson. Eventually later Monday into Tuesday, we'll start seeing some of that wet weather again in the places like Atlanta, back towards Charlotte once again. A winter storm Riley dumped more than 3 feet of snow in parts of the Northeast, and more is potentially on the way. Coming up, winter weather expert is back with the details as we're going to go in depth the difference between the models where some of the heaviest snow could fall.
alert yesterday for first responders in Albany, New York, in the Capital District. 11.9 inches of snow. Some of the residents there tried to keep up with the heavy, wet snow with shovels and snow blowers. Boy, just to the west in Albany County, too, over 2 feet of snow. But there's the potential that even more snow could be hitting parts of the Northeast later next week. Winter weather expert Tom Nizzle is closely watching the models to see who can get hit the hardest.
Yeah, Ray, and around meteorological circles, people are talking about the fact that we may get hit again in the eastern U.S. midweek. Take a look at what we've got on our water vapor imagery to show you the large-scale pattern here. There's Riley off the east coast of the U.S. right here. This is Winter Storm Quinn that's put down over 5 feet of snow in the Sierra. This is going to cut across the Rockies and work its way to the northern plains. Then, because of a blocking high-pressure system here, it's going to kind of do a loop here and move its way to the northeast. A very complicated pattern here. Let's take a look at how this sets up. Typically, Colorado lows will move northeastward like this and put down a swath of snow and then head up into Ontario, Canada. It's all done. In this case, though, we've got a blocking high-pressure system here that is kind of going to act as a fence and not let that low come up that direction. That is why we end up with this track that we're seeing here out toward the east coast. Not too dissimilar from what we saw with Riley. The threat area for snowfall then extends eastward across the Great Lakes and all the way over to the east coast as we go through the middle of the week. Now let's go ahead and let's take a look at this system, picking it up on Monday morning, okay? So Monday morning, a lot of action going on in the Dakotas here, possibly even blizzard conditions. But watch how this low, instead of tracking in this direction, is going to move off to the east here. It's going to go through the Midwest, put snow down to the north of that area from Chicago through Detroit, and then eventually it crosses the Appalachians and we get redevelopment of a low pressure system right here. That's the GFS model. The European model oftentimes will have a lot of uncertainties or a dissimilar model run with that. Take a look though. The European model, very similar to the GFS model in the location of this system as we get into the middle part of the week. Now this can have some pretty interesting implications here. And Ray, this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, it is, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing to be in agreement this far in advance. But yeah, it's still from Riley, though. We see here that we've had significant beach erosion. I mean, sandbags here trying to prevent that beach erosion. There's a fence, and at Montauk Point, one place that was hit fairly hard, and the Army Corps engineers will get back in there and start doing their work. And gentlemen, just as they probably are ready to get back in the boat, might be time to get out of the boat again, because we've got not only Riley pulling away, we've got another storm potentially hitting the East Coast.
Yeah, well, folks really would like to have a long break after the coastal impacts and other impacts we've seen from Riley, but like you just showed, the models are giving us concern that the break will be short-lived.
And what I don't like is oftentimes you'll see a repeat of a pattern, right? It locks in and it will go for storm after storm. This is not all that different in some respects than Riley, but there are significant differences here when we talk about it. So, Rick, what I've got there is this is the European model, and this is Wednesday at 8 p.m. So I've got the snow side. I'll talk about that, but could you talk about the implications here with coastal flooding and the high winds again?
Yeah, this model projection of where the low could center itself is very close to where Riley was centered when it first formed offshore. And so we could have, if this is right, and with the agreement in the models, it's every reason to believe it's possible, could have another round of strong onshore flow, waves, heavy surf, and maybe, if the timing with tide is unfortunate again, could have some coastal flooding. Now, both the location and the timing of this low are important because the tides will happen mid-afternoon and between midnight and sunrise. So if the low is at its strongest and the onshore flow is at its strongest around the time of high tide, that'd be a bad thing. But one little break we're going to catch is that the tides will be about 2 feet lower by about Wednesday as compared to what we've been dealing with during the full moon the last couple of days.
Okay, and the other break we get here is this is moving a little faster than certainly Riley that's hanging off here for 2 to 3 days. By the way, I want to show the snowfall forecast. This is the GFS model here. Look at the elevation playing a role once again here, but heavy snowfall totals in the GFS. The European model, Rick, is the same way. So we could have a repeat snowstorm here for New England. This one looks a little colder across there as well.
Yeah, maybe snow closer to the coast this time.
Very well be.
Every storm's different.
We'll be back in just a minute.
guys, I'm going to end the stream. So that was Winter Storm Quinn and Winter Storm Riley. So I will continue to be tracking this nor'easter if it happens. And that's basically it. So, bye guys.